Hello and welcome to the Let's Talk Trans podcast. Today I have my guests Harley, LaForest, and Andrew Spickett. For starters, do we want to say our pronouns?
Yeah, so my name is Harley LaForest. I identify as transmasculine, and my pronouns are he, they.
My name's Andrew Spickett. My pronouns are he, him.
Okay, and our first question today is how do we feel about people claiming being trans as a phase?
Not good.
I think it's one of those things, I've thought a lot about this one. Because I know for some people, I think you just have to be careful with how you word it. Because I do get that a lot of people, especially during the pandemic and during quarantine, were doing a lot of like self-discovery and, searching for their identity. And for a lot of people, they landed at, like, they identified as being trans, and that didn't work out later in life. They realized that that wasn't exactly what fit them, and they changed to a different label. And I think that's fine. That's all part of self-discovery. I don't think people, like, we should be mad at people for just figuring out themselves better. I think it's just when we use language like being a phase, it sort of implies that that's the same for all trans people, especially when, like, me, myself, obviously I've known some people who identified as trans a while ago and don't anymore. But when they say, like, haha, my trans phase, it's like, it doesn't feel good because it's not a phase for me, it's who I am.
Yeah, and I also think a lot of it stems from, I don't know if you would agree with this, but people, like, a lot of times we're under the impression that there's either trans masculine or there's trans feminine, like there's only the two options.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times, like, there's people that fall kind of in between those two labels.
Yeah, definitely.
And it's difficult because we still have that stigma of, like, the two binaries.
Yeah. I think it can be a, like, quote unquote phase for some people, but just in case it isn't, I don't think you should, like, invalidate anybody who is going through a journey of self-discovery by saying, oh, this is just a phase.
Exactly.
Oh, it'll pass. Oh, that was just a phase in my life. You were discovering who you were, and it might not have worked out, but, like, the word phase can easily, like, invalidate someone's experience and be like, oh, well, this will pass, and what if it doesn't pass? Like, that can really make someone feel like you're not taking their transition seriously at all.
I think a phase is more like, when I was in 8th grade, I bleached my hair.
Yeah.
That was a phase.
And I think a lot of that is, like, a very clear example of, like, a microaggression, I think we would all say. How common would we say are microaggressions for trans people?
Very,
unfortunately.
Yeah.
It's pretty often, and especially because it's so often it's people don't realize what they're saying. Like, most of the time, those kind of things, that comes from, like, a family member or, like, a friend who, like, has good intentions, but the way they, like, phrase things just makes you go, like, oh, okay.
It's usually from people who aren't very, like, knowledgeable about the subject, and who they're usually not trying to cause any harm. It's just, like, these ideas and these misconceptions that repeat over and over again, and it's just kind of tiring.
Yeah, what would you say are, like, the most common microaggressions?
Asking, like, what someone's real name is. That happens to me especially a lot, because people are like, oh, I can't imagine you as anything but Andrew, I want to know what this is. And a lot of people let their curiosity go over, like, thinking, is this question, like, harmful? Like, what information am I really gonna gain from this question besides, like, personal information that you don't need to know?
Yeah. Overall, I think, ask the people who ask very invasive questions. I can be pretty open about things like my medical history and stuff like that, so I'm usually okay, but even then there's times when people ask questions about, like, medical transitioning and all of that stuff, and I'm like, that's a little personal.
Yeah.
That's between me and my doctor.
I think there's a lot of questions around, like, secondary sex characteristics, where for trans people, those are, like, the most vulnerable parts of them.
Either for cis people too. Like, someone, don't ask anyone about their genitalia, please. Like,
yeah, for
that's just
anyone.
weird
Don't
for
ask
anyone.
You're right, do not ask about
No.
that.
I think for some reason it's more normal to ask trans people that than
Yeah.
it is to ask cis people. It does not make sense to me.
Yeah.
I think because there's so much stigma about those parts of like what's supposed to be big, what's supposed to be small, what's supposed to, you know, what is it like, what is it supposed to look like, how is it supposed to function, and it's like you wouldn't ask someone like, oh, you wouldn't ask a cis person that, so don't ask a trans person that.
Exactly.
What would you say is the biggest misconception about being trans?
There's so many.
That's what I'm trying to think. I'm like, which one?
Yeah.
There's like 1 million.
Yeah.
There's one misconception is that like adjusting your language and the way that you act to not make those microaggressions and like learning to not make those mistakes means that trans people are inherently sensitive. Like if I say, hey, don't talk about this or this or this, people are like, oh, you want me to change everything, like you're so sensitive, that's such an unreasonable request, when really when you're socializing with anyone, you try your best not to be rude, and it's just a part of socialization trying not to say the wrong thing. And there's been this huge misconception about when you do, like, when someone says, oh, now here's this thing that makes me uncomfortable, when it's specifically, like, around minorities and stuff like that, it's, people will overreact and just see it as someone being sensitive when it's just, like, a reasonable request of adjusting your language slightly just so someone doesn't have to deal with microaggressions, which can be very tiring.
Yeah. I think I would have to say it's the idea that trans is a new thing, because it's not. Trans people have existed since, like, you know, people had any idea. And it's, of course, it has a lot to do with the gender binary, but it's just, it's so Eurocentric because,
Colonization.
yeah, literally. Because there have been, like, not explicitly using the word trans because the language can be new, but the ideas are still the same. Many like non-white cultures have different things that align with what we consider to be trans. And even then, even in white culture, there's been trans people like forever. So all of these people who are just like, oh, you know, kids these days with their being trans, but no, and a lot of the reason we don't hear about them is just because they had to, you know, keep that all under wraps. They couldn't express that in that time. I think that it's really wrong for people to say that it's a bad thing that there's so many more people being trans now, because it's only because people now are able to express that safely without being in danger of being like killed or harassed. It's yeah.
I think a lot of it is also like we don't see like elder trans people because they were forced to hide that they were killed, they were assaulted, like so much happened to them.
Yeah.
They were kept under.
Sorry,
I
Andrew
need
got a
lunch.
hot dog.
I need food.
I think the biggest misconception about trans people is our population count.
Yeah.
We make up like less than 1% of the population, but everything on
everyone's trans now.
everything on conservative news is like trans this, trans that, like trans people in women's spaces, trans people in sports, all this, but it's like
yeah, it's like everyone's trans, and I'm like, there's like a handful of us.
I think that's a part of the thing of seeing people instead of as individuals as one big lumpy group,
Yeah.
right? And so people will often see just trans people as like this kind of like mass of the stereotypes that you'll see, which is like dyed hair, sensitive, stuff like that. Those stereotypes that have really kind of harmed because it just I know I'm getting off topic, but those stereotypes give people a reason to not take trans people seriously by making them into some sort of like caricature, and then you lump all those people into this caricature, and then you're like, see how big this is, because all you're representing is like this one thing, and you're representing it over and over again. And like, it's not only that they're over-representing trans people and like making it seem like a bigger problem than it is. It's also like they're over caricaturizing. That's not
Yeah.
a word.
It can be.
They're not even representing trans people, like showing the whole complex thing. It's more like a 2D cartoon character who's like, my pronouns are this and that. Silly boys.
Our next question comes from a fan of the Instagram account. They say, a friend of mine recently came out as trans. I want her to know that I support her and accept her. What do I do/say?
Tell her that you support her and accept her. Those affirmations are really nice.
Yeah.
Make an effort to try to ask her, like, about. Sorry, I'm eating.
Do you wanna like? We
Take
can,
a pause. I can
go to
take over
Harley
for 2
and then
seconds.
when you're done.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that you came out and were asking this question already shows to me that you already care enough to try to, ask what you can do better. I think always just respect name and pronouns, always. Even like certain like language, if you want to ask, because I know like some people are like, even like with like slang. Like personally, I'm okay with a lot of things, but I know a lot of trans people aren't okay with being called like bro or like girl or just some of that like sort of, it is, a lot of people use it in a gender neutral way, but some people do find it uncomfortable, so I would always ask and make sure they're comfortable with that stuff. Yeah, what Andrew said.
I'm ready to talk.
Okay, you're right.
Make sure also to like really hone in on the listening part to your friend and making sure you're not disrespecting her in any way. Also, something many people do and that I've done personally with trans friends, which is like you shouldn't do, is comparing like gender characteristics. Like comparative dysphoria is a big thing.
Yeah.
And so if you're like, oh, I have this, you don't, or if you're just pointing that out, it can seem like a little joke, but it can make things worse and make someone like sadder. But yeah.
I would say just listen. If they tell you something, listen. If they say, hey, I'm not comfortable with that, don't do it. If they ask you for support them. But it's really, I feel it's pretty straightforward. I know it can feel complicated and overwhelming, especially when you're not familiar with sort of the subject, but really just pay attention, listen to your friend. They will tell you if something's wrong or if you say something that they don't appreciate. So yeah, I would just pay attention. I think you're already doing a really great job coming out and asking for advice. So yeah.
What are some programs slash institutions that have made you more comfortable during your transition?
A good one in the local area is Trans Wellness Ontario. They've been very good. I've done a lot of their stuff. They provide a bunch of resources for trans people in Ontario. That's hence the name. They have a bunch of resources, a lot of like gender specific therapy. That's the one I went into. I went there to see a gender therapist. They can get you referrals to certain doctors and medical practitioners if you want to do the medical part of your transition. And they have a lot of support. Q-Link is another good one. They're around the Walkerville area and they just provide a safe space for trans youth, as well as things like community and food, and just you can go there at whatever times they're open and just find a space where you're accepted and you can talk to others about what you're experiencing, and that's for all queer youth. That's not just trans kids.
I live in LaSalle, so I haven't really had access to many organizations with trans people, but I have been to Trans Wellness Ontario a few times. Nice place, good place. Yeah, also that, and anywhere that you can find community with other trans people
Yeah.
and really like, yeah,
There's always Pride Fest
share.
every year in Windsor in August, early August, I think.
Yeah, I think they usually do it in August.
That's always a fun one. You can find a lot of people there who are similar to you. Just like
Art in the Park.
Art in the Park is
Art in
yeah.
the Park is very gay.
Yeah. I feel, trans people, as much as people like to ignore it, we're kind of, we're usually around.
Everywhere.
So, you can find that community wherever.
Yeah, I saw a trans woman on the bus the other day.
Wow.
I wanted to be like, hey, but I didn't want her to like be scared.
I don't know if you scare anyone, Dakota.
You scare me.
I'd like to think I'm very scary, but I'm not. Okay, this is off topic. I don't know why I put my notes over here. What are some current trans issues and protests I can be a part of? How do I show political support for trans people?
The things in America.
Yeah, I guess we have to talk about that now. Yeah, so definitely the political issues right now going in our neighboring country,
Yeah.
not great. It's awful. Trans people are being denied service, being denied health care. They're getting there's been so much more of a rise of discrimination, especially surprisingly in our generation, which honestly shocks me how many people like our age are doing that. But definitely, the internet is a great resource.
It is.
It always, it's insane and it's not always great, but definitely it's a powerful tool. So you can show your support on the internet. You can post things, repost people who are looking for support, GoFundMes, if they need money, whether that's for like medical transitioning or to get out of a bad situation. If you can donate, donate to other resources for trans people, local organizations in Windsor, or projects in other countries. I know in the US they have the Trevor Project, which is a very great resource. It's like a phone line that, it's like a phone crisis line for queer youth. That's always a good one. Like I said, GoFundMes. If you can't donate to GoFundMes, you can share them on, you can repost onto your stories or something to get the word out, share, comment, interact, just so that they can get that information out there. And just, like I said with the other one earlier, just be there to support if you have trans friends or family members. It's a very stressful and scary time right now to be trans, so support them if they need someone to talk to, if they need any sort of support or comfort. Be there for them, because we're really going through the meat grinder right now.
Yeah, it's
so
a lot right now, which I think
I'm sure they would appreciate any support you can give them.
yeah. And I also think that
Andrew, do you have something to say?
I'm raising my hand, yeah. Sorry, Dakota.
I also think participating in Pride is very important.
Yeah.
Pride is a protest, and I think
Yeah,
being a part of that
always has been.
Okay.
If anyone is interested in getting a second hot dog, if you head to the back now, it's first come, first serve, and you were able to get one more hot dog, so head on to the back.
Not the second hot dog.
Okay, anyways, when it comes to trans issues, a lot of them, since I am transmasculine, a lot of the issues that I've experienced are transmasculine issues.
Right.
One of them, right now, in the US, I think just talking about issues also really helps. But right now in the US, a lot of cis men are very, the whole alpha male thing that's going on.
Yes.
Being very insecure about their testosterone levels and actually hogging testosterone. So now there's a shortage here of testosterone, and a lot of suppliers don't have it because cis men are being prescribed dangerous levels of testosterone that are actually not good for them in the long run, by doctors who want money because of yay.
And I think for me, that's someone that's sliding into trans femininity quite slowly. I'm not someone that's like experiencing a lot of discrimination because it's something for me like right now that I'm able to like mask.
Yeah.
But I see a lot of issues because like a lot of people have more hatred towards trans femme people than they do trans mask.
Yeah. It's a whole
yeah.
thing for sure. I definitely think that unfortunately people who identify as trans women or trans feminine do suffer the brunt of transphobia, especially when you talk about things like the bathroom argument, trans people in sports. They're a lot more likely to be harassed or assaulted or even murdered, and I think definitely we have to like understand that as like for me and Andrew as like trans masculine people, there is a certain amount of privilege there because we don't experience the same thing. It's not the same experience.
Can we talk about the bathroom issue for a second?
Let's talk about the bathroom issue.
First, can we spread out a second? It's just, Andrew's hot dog is just like, it's too pungent.
I'm squished on the side.
It's too
What's wrong
pungent
with
for
my
me.
hot dog?
That's
Okay, we're
way
moving
better.
back.
Okay. So,
anyways, bathrooms. Speaking of pungent.
oh my gosh, the trans bathroom issue is the stupidest thing I've ever heard of. I think a lot of it's like, the thing that I've heard about the trans bathroom issue is like the issue that they're worried about isn't trans people, because everyone's like, oh, what if there's someone pretending to be a trans woman in the bathroom but they're actually a man? It's like, that's not a trans person. Why are you worried about trans people in the bathroom? You should be worried about cis people.
You know, it's so silly.
Here's the thing. The argument is that trans women are just men who are just trying to get access to women's facilities. Spoiler alert, men who want to get into women's facilities are just gonna go.
They're just gonna go in. There's
Also-
nothing stopping them.
No, this isn't Hogwarts, and I know awful a comparison to make considering the author. This isn't Hogwarts where they try to go in and the stairs fall and they can't get in.
No.
They're regular doors. They're just gonna walk in, and they're not. And for sure, they're not gonna go through years of discrimination and being estranged from their family and going through medical transitioning just to get that one peep.
No man is gonna start taking estrogen so he can walk into
No.
the women's bathroom. Andrew, what were you gonna say?
I was gonna say also, a lot of people want trans women in men's bathrooms, but also don't want trans men in women's bathrooms.
No.
They're like, go in the bathroom that's like the sexy percent at birth.
If-
I've seen some trans men who are
They're freaky.
like 6 foot and like
I'm gonna
burly
go-
bearded lumberjacks,
go into the
and you
women's
want
bathroom.
them in the women's bathroom.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of TikToks of like very masculine trans men being like, so you want me in the women's bathroom?
I know.
And
See, that's why I don't go in either. I use the gender neutral one because I don't think I'm feminine enough to be like to fit in the women's bathroom or masculine enough to go in the men's. So I just
it's also
hold it.
dangerous for trans
It's
women
dangerous for us going into the bathroom
It's-
that's assigned to our gender.
Yeah.
because like you're putting women in the men's bathroom, and also women who have a movement of like intense hatred against them, specifically by some
Also-
men.
Also, fetishization and sexualization of trans people. Like, we all know what chasers are. People that purposefully date trans individuals.
Yeah.
With bad intentions. Like, those people are in the bathroom that you're trying to make us go into, and it causes an unsafe environment for everyone.
Yeah, I think people just need, like, everyone needs to pee.
Yeah. I think we should all say on a count of 3 what we do when we go to the bathroom, okay? 1, 2, 3. I go
Pee.
in, I go to the bathroom, I wash my hands, I get out.
Yeah.
That's what I do.
Oh, I didn't say anything. yet.
Yeah, and
Andrew doesn't use the bathroom. Andrew
Andrew
I-
is completely
yeah.
void of bathroom.
I can't do it anymore.
Yeah, no, I think it's such a stupid issue. I think everyone needs to just, you know what? I mean, I get in larger establishments. I think we should all just have like a bunch of single stall gender neutral bathrooms.
I don't like multiple stall bathrooms.
No.
I also,
That's just a personal. That's not even a trans thing. That's just a.
Yeah.
I don't think that like trans people are the ones that's like, oh, you guys need to have your own bathroom. I think, but I also think it'd be kind of a party if there was like a trans femme bathroom and a trans bathroom.
Oh my god, the stuff that would go on.
I think it would just be a little party.
No,
Yeah,
I think
I
get
think
rid
the
of
whole-
stalls. I think let me have a private place. You should. Everyone should make like an Andrew bathroom.
Yeah, give me like my like private lounge.
Yeah, give
to
me
use the
my own bathroom.
Yeah, I think overall it's just stupid.
It's stupid, just like me. No, I'm just kidding. I was gonna say something. Yeah, I think the whole issue of like trans people in the bathroom, just as someone that like used to play on, or I still do play on men's sports teams, the stuff that goes in the locker room, the thing that you have to fear is the cis men that are in this bathroom with other cis men, because they're freaky, they're weird,
Oh yeah.
they're so gross, so sexual. It's nothing that trans people are whatsoever.
Yeah.
What do we think is okay, let's end this with, what do we think is the worst part about being trans, and what do we think is the best part of being trans?
Worst part of being trans for me has been other people. I think being trans would be great if everyone was just chill about it.
That's
But it would be so much better. But like dysphoria in itself can be really amplified by other people. And I feel like mine wouldn't have been as bad if there were people like going up to my parents being like, "Yep, your daughter looks like a girl and not a boy." Like going up and like saying stuff like that to my face, to my parents' face. It's just all the hatred makes it like contributes so much to like the trans suicide rate
Yeah.
and stuff like that.
For me, the worst part is like the lack of recognition and the lack of representation. Like even more so for trans feminine people, like I don't see much of like trans feminine YouTubers or like on social media. I think one of my favorite TV shows is Pose. I don't know if you've guys seen that one,
I don't know that one.
but it features so many trans feminine people, and it's about like the ballroom scene in the 90s and like the AIDS crisis. It's very nice.
Similar to like Paris is Burning.
I don't think I've seen Paris is Burning, so I don't
That
really
one's
know.
more about drag, but yeah.
Okay.
Same like ballroom.
Yeah.
Stuff. But yeah, I think definitely those two. I mean, for me, probably just the bodily dysphoria. Like, yeah, I know. And a lot of that ties into just the lack of medical resources for trans people, because it might have been easier for me now if I had more access to like doctors and things that would help me with this, but unfortunately there's not very many, and it makes the wait times like astronomically long. Like I don't have an appointment with until like September for something, and I tried to book it back in February, like because there's no one. Everyone has to go to the same doctors, and this is also just this is Canadian healthcare altogether. The wait times are absolutely ridiculous, but I think overall for me, the worst part would have to just be the bodily dysphoria, because it's such a weird feeling to look in the mirror and not recognize. It's some weird mix between just not recognizing yourself and then hating what you do recognize, and it's just an awful experience. I wouldn't wish that on anyone to have to go through it.
Also, like gender dysphoria looks very different for trans men versus trans women.
And for every individual trans person, it's different.
For me, like it's more so just like a longing for like different sex characteristics, for longer hair, for like to be able to wear makeup. It's just like the deep desire.
Yeah.
And like I was telling like my therapist, I'm like, I don't feel dysphoric in men's clothing, but I feel so damn euphoric in women's clothing.
Yeah.
It's like, and my therapist was like, that's actually like really common for trans feminine people, because men's clothing is often also able to be worn by women.
Yeah. And I think I have a similar like situation, because I also like I don't feel directly dysphoric wearing women's clothing. I actually enjoy dressing more femininely once in a while. But I think the problem with me is I know the reason it upsets me is because I know that when I do dress more femininely, people don't recognize me as masculine. Like when I dress like this, most people get the gist, and I do look fairly masculine even though I'm pre-hormones.
Yeah.
But it's not like when I wear, a lot of that is how I dress and my style. If I were to wear like a dress or something, most people would go with the assumption that I was a girl. So I feel comfortable, like if I'm at my house or with like close friends, I feel okay dressing more femininely because I know they respect me and I know how they view me, and they view me as a man, just a man wearing a dress. But in public, I don't think I would be okay with that. But you're right, it's definitely different between like, because masculine clothes are definitely more normalized for women to wear.
Yeah. And I think for me, like, I kind of have this same but different issue where it's like when I'm wearing women's clothing, I feel like I don't look feminine enough, and I'm like, but my therapist was telling me, she was like, you are very feminine presenting, like even with your hair, like it could be seen as like the way it's cut is like a pixie cut or something, but like with like your earring and like your voice and everything, I'm like, stop.
Yeah, no, I think you do. I mean, even before you
recognized.
Yeah.
Before I
always
turned
saw
girl.
you as a very like a feminine person.
Before I went girl mode. Before girl mode was activated.
Activate little big red button in your brain.
Boom.
Yeah, I'd say for me the best part is just the community.
Oh, the community.
I think I've met so many people that I would have never met in my life if I were not trans.
I've had the privilege of transitioning, like fairly, I'm sorry, Harley, fairly a lot.
Yeah.
I had,
because you're on like HRT, right?
yeah, so I've had a very,
September 2025.
I've
We're
had a
getting
very
there.
supportive family, and I know it sounds like I'm bragging, I'm just saying what like the best
It's
part of
okay.
being trans
I'm just mad because I'm on my period right now and I'm suffering.
has been for me. I was allowed to go on bloggers when I was younger, and so I got to resist a lot of changes that came with like female puberty, and I also had the privilege of, did you guys know I'm on testosterone?
Yes, oh my gosh.
Wow. And
Crazy.
so I've had the
I
privilege,
thought you were just naturally a baritone.
yeah, I've had the privilege of doing all that.
And I think with that, we kind of wrap up this podcast. Hopefully we're able to like a few more with some more guests. But all in all, just like be supportive, be respectful, and make sure the questions you're asking are appropriate. But also, if you have questions, ask us. A lot of us are very open, especially if you have a close relationship with us. So yeah, I think
Get to know us. We're pretty cool people.
to make the world a more equitable space, we just need to communicate better, participate in protests, ask us how you can help. Don't just assume that you can help. And maybe it can be things as little as like changing different vernacular and changing the way you address people. Don't say guys, don't say ladies and gentlemen, because it just builds a binary. But also it can be participating in protests. It could be reposting tweets and Instagram stories, supporting in like Trans Day of Visibility, participating in Pride, whether you're like walking, whether you're putting art up or selling art somewhere. Yeah, I think all of it just boils down to communication, and it just boils down to asking us how you can help and how you can communicate. And with that, we wrap this up. Thank you so much.